Friends of the Earth.
The environmental group Friends of the Earth.
Friends of the Earth are actually quite good at getting laws passed.
Listen to the rhythm of the falling rain.
Here in Parliament, Friends of the Earth are absolutely crucial. They're a campaigning force, they educate us, they inform us. Without them, so many things would have slipped off the agenda.
We've got the biggest crisis we've ever faced as a species, and we need organisations like Friends of the Earth.
I think Friends of the Earth is attempting to make changes for the better in the world, and that's something that I'm very happy to support.
What is Friends of the Earth? Friends of the Earth is a family of individuals, of local groups, of staff who work together to bring enormous change to the environment and, we hope in the end, to global society.
In the summer of 1971, a small group of British environmentalists met a visiting Californian for dinner in central London. The Californian, David Brower, had become frustrated with the existing US conservation groups and had formed his own Friends of the Earth. He'd come to Europe to see if others would join him.
We were moving into an era where we were wasting resources. Very definitely, very blatantly, very deliberately. The bottles that I used to collect as a kid and get threepence on, the Tizer bottles and all the glass bottles that we used to use for soft drinks, were going one trip. And we decided that we would attack that. We could demonstrate to people the waste of resources.
It's more convenient for the housewife to have disposable packages.
It's also more profitable for your companies, of course.
This had not escaped me.
It's irresponsible of the packaging industry to compound this problem when really they should be helping all the rest of us look at the refuse disposal problem.
The publicity resulting from the Schweppes bottle dumps gave the new organisation confidence. With its combination of watertight research and attention-grabbing stunts, Friends of the Earth had arrived. And the new players were trailblazers.
We had David Pedley as our in-house lawyer, and he had been a parliamentary draftsman. So we got very early on into the habit of drafting our own legislation.
Friends of the Earth's spokespeople were becoming a fixture in the nation's media.
It is not so much the country that is being profligate with the resources as the decision makers of the country who have allowed some of their number to be profligate with the resources and have encouraged the rest of us to be profligate.
The organisation was making many new friends and the occasional enemy.
Are you suggesting that some environmentalists are being manipulated by Russia?
I think it only takes a few people who know what they're doing to give environmentalist movement a nudge in that direction.
I just think it's very sad when a man of Hoyle's eminence and stature is reduced in a debate as important as this to uttering this kind of smear.
Well, I think in the early days, because we were breaking new ground and because we were doing things that automatically got you into the media, you could actually see where a campaign began, where it finished, and you could show a success. And there are lots of them. I mean, every time you go to Snowdonia National Park and you see the absence of a copper mine, you can thank Friends of the Earth, and particularly Graham Searle for that. There's no gold mine in the Maldak Estuary, for instance. That was another success. So there were lots of things that you could actually measure. For me, a working class boy from Deptford, it took me completely out of my comfort zone and showed me things that I would never have got involved in before. So I was very happy to be there.
By the end of the 1970s, Friends of the Earth's influence was being spread by over 70,000 supporters and 200 local groups. But there would be few quick wins, and the organisation learned to play the long game, accepting short-term setbacks in the battle for lasting change. It's an aspect that persists today.
What we always try to do is develop a campaign plan so that we build up an evidence base for why the change is needed, and we build up support in society to put pressure on government for that change. Sometimes they don't agree there and then, but it means that we're one step further forward when there's a new political opportunity. Whatever we're doing, we are changing the world, even if we don't win every single campaign ask all of the time.
The early 1980s saw focus on preserving key wildlife habitats known as sites of special scientific interest. But the period was dominated by the year-long public inquiry, eventually lost, into building a second nuclear reactor at Sizewell in Suffolk.
I think people forget how tough it was for Friends of the Earth in the mid-80s. The early 80s had been really difficult. Huge amount of energy had gone into the Sizewell campaign, the inquiry. It had not only sucked hundreds of thousands of pounds out of the organisation, but sucked a lot of the energy out of the organisation as well. And when I was appointed in '84, the organisation was not in a good place. It was all but bankrupt, which they didn't tell me at the point of my appointment, but there we are. The staff had been reduced to 7 or 8 people. It was tough. And from that perspective, it was really a question of just building it up again and getting back into the swing with some very big national campaigns.
The potential risks from intensive farming, to the food we eat, to wildlife and to the safety of our drinking water, lay at the heart of key campaigns in the 1980s.
We are making sure that proper monitoring is taking place based on up-to-date standards.
The minister is either confused or is lying.
Every year, thousands of tribespeople are made homeless by the ruthless destruction of the world's rainforests.
This most wonderful place on Earth, the richest biome that you can possibly imagine, so beautiful and yet being trashed. And we were able to show that consumers and taxpayers and voters acting together could stop companies and governments from ruining the rainforest, and that they could be harvested sustainably and protected at the same time.
As the decade came to a close, there was also a new threat to contend with.
The greenhouse effect is the single most serious environmental problem we now face. It's already beginning to create disruptions to meteorological patterns of a sort that, to most scientists now, particularly in the United States, is sufficiently robust evidence to say the greenhouse effect is with us now. It's not something for the next century. It's here.
It was a busy time in the 80s. We had a lot of campaigns on our hands. I guess the one that was most intriguing to me was the campaign that we launched against ozone-depleting gases. That was a 4-year campaign that ended up extremely successfully at the end of the day, using every known device that Friends of the Earth had available to it, including even recruiting Princess Diana to declare that she was going to stop using all aerosols. So concerned was she about the ozone layer. It wasn't actually our message, but who cares?
The high profile being enjoyed by environmental issues was attracting some new friends.
It's we Conservatives who are not merely friends of the Earth, we are its guardians and trustees for generations to come.
And it also led to a rise in the number of Friends of the Earth's local groups.
I have directly felt the pressure of Friends of the Earth via constituents and voters, people who've been mobilised by the organisation to put pressure on me as their representative to ensure that the debates in Parliament are the right debates.
Local groups are much more than foot soldiers on the ground. They shape the spirit and nature and the priorities of Friends of the Earth continually. They are the heart and soul of Friends of the Earth.
A lot of parents have come here to raise their children because of the pristine environment, and so, you know, it's supremely important that we look after it.
Alnwick Area Friends of the Earth has got a mailing list of around 150 people. We've established a community orchard in Alnwick on a patch of waste ground there. We've done a lot of campaigning over the Climate Change Bill and the Climate Change Act around renewables and around biofuels, and today we're going to be doing beach clean here. I think we sensed that people like doing something a bit more social that was also productive. Normally over a drink we try and compare the most exotic or interesting piece of rubbish that we've been able to find.
I think the children have really enjoyed today, actually, yeah. Not just because they're using their little litter pickers, they're out there, they're learning about the local flora and fauna, and they're learning about caring for their local beach.
One of the key issues that we were working on through the 1990s was that pollution tends to hit the poorest hardest. We actually managed to prove this in the UK by mapping pollution data against social data and very clearly demonstrating that it was people who lived in deprived areas that tended to live in the most polluted areas as well. So this resulted in us setting up a big new programme of work really looking at how to tackle environmental justice, but not just in the UK, we're actually looking for projects abroad as well.
It costs a lot to have a toilet seat made from the Earth's last mahogany trees. Mahogany furniture costs blood. If the Brazilian Indians who own the trees don't want to sell them, they can pay with their lives. For native peoples, animals, plants, and trees, mahogany is murder.
We're one of 76 groups that make up Friends of the Earth International. We are the largest grassroots-based environmental federation in the world. And this means wherever you go around the world and meet a Friends of the Earth group, you will meet local groups, you will see people taking action on their doorstep. And as an international federation, we will come together around things like international climate change talks, or here in the UK, we will look for what are the best ways that we can show solidarity with our colleagues around the world.
I think the environment and poverty and wealth are intimately connected. Many of the world's biggest apparently environmental issues are also development questions, they're social questions, they're economic questions. It's really hard to disentangle them. And if I give you an example, if you are in Guatemala and you are an indigenous person trying to protect your forest, you're trying to protect your forest because that's where you get your food and your water supply from. If you then start getting attacked by gunmen working for the local illegal logger, is that a human rights issue? Is that a development issue? Is that an environmental issue? It's all of them. You can't separate environment, social, economic, civil.
Whilst social justice was moving centre stage for Friends of the Earth, in the mid-90s, many local groups were preoccupied with the government's plans for a vast number of new roads, including some through sites of special scientific interest. As ever, Friends of the Earth worked in partnership with many other organisations, including a new generation of direct action groups.
This was the moment environmental groups had planned for, the first machines moving to clear woodland on the bypass route.
I will never forget when the last mighty oak in Newbury fell, and it was a profound moment of the level of vandalism that we could destroy such a beautiful site for the sake of saving a few minutes off a car journey.
Although many key battles were lost, a wider conversation had begun, and hundreds of road schemes were shelved in the years that followed.
That will remain with me forever, that particular battle, as will the campaign on GMO crops, which came shortly after. Both of them leaving me with a very strong impression about the power of mainstream lobbying linked to radical direct action tactics. And I think if one could look for a perfect combination of how to make big change in a short time, it's probably something in there.
Well, looking normal appears to have worked. We just crossed the security cordon with absolutely no questioning.
Surveys have shown that 9 out of 10 members of the public would like to recycle if only it was made easier for them.
What will happen to the polar bears?
The climate change issue had been around in Friends of the Earth for as long as I had been there.
Will we turn into puddles if it gets really hot?
But the Big Ask campaign was really the moment when we deemed it right to put a lot of resources into a big push that might get the breakthrough of national legislation looking at all of the greenhouse gas emissions across the UK economy.
The intensive 4-year Big Ask campaign garnered huge press coverage, partly the result of continuing support from celebrities like Tom York and Johnny Borrell. With over 200,000 members of the public signing up to support, in 2008, you achieved a world first. the Climate Change Act.
One of the most important things that Friends of the Earth does is we don't just campaign for kind of small temporary changes in society. We're really trying to instigate transformational change at a very rapid pace, and the Climate Change Act is just a great example of a piece of legislation that has really framed future action. Doesn't mean to say we can give up and go home because we've won everything, but it means that we've had a real shift in political commitment and legal commitment to action on climate change. So that was Friends of the Earth at our best.
The continuing challenge of climate change also illustrates the power of Friends of the Earth as a global federation. Following on from the UK campaign, the Big Ask continued across Europe, whilst Friends of the Earth International's scale and reach has made it a significant presence at every round of international climate negotiations.
As much as the fight may be difficult, it may be slow, we may face many obstacles, it's a fight we have to continue and it's a fight we have to win. And the best place and the only place really to take part in that fight is within Friends of the Earth.
There's quite an acrimonious discussion at the moment inside the Green Movement about whether the environmental organisations are on the right track, whether they're somehow responsible for the very difficult situation that we're in today. I find this completely ridiculous. We wouldn't be as far down this path in terms of increased environmental understanding and activism if it hadn't been for organisations like Friends of the Earth.
One can look at the individual successes of Friends of the Earth over its 40 years, and it's an incredible track record. But beyond those individual successes, the repositioning of the environmental question as something which now society embraces at all levels, I think is the biggest success of all.
We won an argument and we changed awareness, but we didn't change the outcomes. We're still doing a lot of things that are really stupid, that are really damaging. The livelihood and the security of anybody under 40 is enormously threatened. The next big battle over the next 30 years is to change the outcomes.
Oh, you've been a very, very bad girl.
Why? Tell me why?
Because you haven't had your loft insulation upgraded.
Yes!
The big goals for the next 10 years are to put the UK firmly on the path to a low carbon, low resource use economy, restoring our key ecosystems. There are other things we want to do, but if we can, with others, play a major role in bringing that about, the leverage, the ability that will give us to influence elsewhere in the world, as well as do the right thing in the UK, will be huge.
Our chief executive actually took a pay cut of 20%, and this is amazing. He's surviving and getting by on £1.2 million a year. That's all he's on now.
We're not just proposing narrow environmental solutions that will solve some very local environmental problem, but completely ignore the economic and the political realities round about. You have to combine them to get enduring solutions. And I think we face that now as humanity, that if you look at the way environmental trends are going, there is no way we're going to get out of climate change, no way we're going to get out of increasing biodiversity loss unless we can become much fairer, because there is not enough resource to go round if we carry on distributing it so terribly unequally.
We've got young mothers coming in, we've got middle-aged ladies chairing their own community sessions. It's absolutely amazing. People are finding that they can do things they never ever thought possible.
The unique thing about Friends of the Earth is that we have this wonderful network of local groups around the country. We have a very strong national office, and we have the largest network of national organisations across the globe. What I hope Friends of the Earth manages to do in the future is to unite those three levels and organise and mobilise taxpayers, constituents, voters to get governments to do the right thing. Because if we don't do it, who's going to?
The key message for the future is work together, keep focused on the really big environmental issues, and bring your friends and family with you. We need more people to get the political change, to get this new relationship between people and environment embedded in the economy.